Hi everybody, my name is Gethin Ellis and welcome to this short video about creating a SQL Server database. SQL Server uses databases as the large container used for storing data. Now, in a previous video we looked at Management Studio and we looked at the databases folder. When we create our database, the database name and the objects that will exist in that database will be available from that folder. Okay, following on from here, we're going to look at how we can create our own databases using both Management Studio and scripts. Now, when you create your first database, when you create any sort of database in SQL Server, the database will consist of at least two files. It will consist of a data file, which is used to store all your data, all your tables, indexes, any data in those tables, stored procedures, etc. They all get stored in a data file, and by default your SQL Server database will have one when it's first created. It'll also consist of a transaction file which records all changes made to the data in your database, so things like inserts, updates and deletes. Now, the transaction log is really important. It's fundamental to data recovery, giving you the ability to do point-in-time restores and also allowing you to issue transactions in SQL Server. And there's some options we've got around these files in how they grow as data is added, how we manage them in terms of recoverability, whether they need backing up or not. In Management Studio, it's easy to create a new database. Okay, we simply right-click the database folder, choose New Database and follow the wizard through. And there's a few pages on there that we're going to look at in just a bit. We have to give a database a name, we have to specify a location for the data and log files, and we need to possibly choose things like the growth rate for our data and transaction log files. Okay, so you can create a database without actually knowing any Transact SQL, but underneath, Management Studio is issuing create database statements, which we're also going to look at. So I've signed into my virtual machine, I've started up Management Studio, and I've connected to my SQL instance, SQL 2017. Now you can see there in Management Studio we get a list of different folders, including the database folder, which you can see here. If I right click the database folder, click on New Database, it starts the New Database dialog box. So I'm going to give the database a name. I'm going to call it MyDB. Okay, you can see how the logical names of each file, the data file and the transaction log, are changed to represent that database name. You can set the initial size of the database. So I'm going to make the data file 64 meg and I'm going to leave the log at 8 megabytes. Then I'm just going to scroll to the right a little bit and you can see there we've got the auto growth options. Now, in previous versions of SQL Server, the auto growth option would be set at 10%. The default's now changed to a fixed amount in megabytes, and mine's going to grow by 64 meg each time the database auto grows. So I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to click on OK, and I'm quite happy with that setting for the log as well. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to using auto grow, for my databases I like to monitor the size of each file, and usually I will look to grow them manually. However, I will always leave auto grow on as a fail-safe. For example, it might be the weekend and my database fills up all the space on a particular file. I want it to be able to grow. Okay, but generally I don't want SQL Server to be managing auto grow. I want to be taking care of that myself and potentially setting my database to a reasonable size to allow some future growth as well, so I'm not constantly growing the database. In the path folder here we get to specify the location of our files, and we'll talk more about the sort of physical design of our servers in a later video, but generally it's always been recommended by both Microsoft and sort of in the community at large that your data and log files be split. These days very much depends on the storage that you're using, but if you wanted to specify a new location for either your data or your log file, you can do. Now in this particular case I don't have a different drive to put it on. My D drive there is in fact my CD drive, so it's going to have to stay on the C drive, so I'm going to leave both as default, but if you wanted to change them, that's where you get to change that during the create database statement. Now I'm going to click on the options here. Okay, full recovery, so we will be able to do a point in time, Compatibility level, SQL Server version next. This is 140. Containment type, none or partial. I'm going to leave that as none. Then we've got all the other options that we can change. We've got things like auto close, which you're never ever going to want to turn on. The auto create statistics, auto shrink, you're never really going to want to turn that on either, in truth. Update statistics asynchronously, a whole bunch of database options here. We go down, we've got some file streaming options. We've got recovery, so we've got page verify. Default is checksum. Okay, you're not really going to want to deviate from that at all. Recovery time in seconds. This will dictate how long a checkpoint will take to run. So how frequently changed pages in memory are hardened to disk. Again, I've really changed that value there. And it's going to be at 1 minute. And then we've got whether the database is going to be read-only, whether it's going to be encryption enabled, and what type of access we're going to have. So we've got multi-user. It could be single user, it could be restricted. Okay, and then I'm just going to hit the script button here. Okay, in Management Studio, just about every action you perform, there will be the option to script out that action. So I click OK here, and it'll go away and create my database, as you can see. If I expand my database and go to the tables, there's absolutely nothing in here yet. It's just an empty database. It's a container for storing what will be our data. But because I hit the script button, it generated the create database statement that will create this database. So you can see there, create database mydb, containment num, on the primary file group. It gives the logical file names of the file, it gives the path for the file, the initial size, and how it's going to grow. Okay, you can see that there. And then these are the other options. We've got compatibility level and some of the other options. Auto shrink, as I mentioned, talking through the wizard, update stats. All these options get set here as well. So if I were to right click and delete my database, it's gone. I can now use this script to create it again. So I click on execute, command completed successfully. I right click and refresh the databases folder, and we have our database recreated from the script. Now it's worth noting here, when you delete a database, it's gone. It doesn't go in the recycle bin. The files are gone. If you want to recover it, you have to go back to a last known backup. Okay, assuming you've got one. So don't just delete databases without making sure you don't need them in the first instance. And when they've gone, they're gone. This brings us to an end of our Create a SQL Server Database video. We look at creating objects, things like tables, indexes, and stored procedures for storing and working with data in a later video. My name is Gethin Ellis. Check out the website at gethinellis.com. If you need some help with SQL Server, feel free to check out our SQL Server consulting pages on the website, or feel free to get in touch with me. Follow us on Twitter at Gethin_Ellis, and do subscribe to the channel to get notified of future videos as they're released. Bye for now.